recording for us pretty soon. There we go. The recording just started. I'd like to welcome everybody into the group today and remind you of a couple of our sort of, you all know this, you've been through these before. We keep our microphones off and you don't need to have your cameras on. I won't be monitoring that side of it anyways. If you want to ask me a question or jump in and add something to the conversation, then please, especially with this size of group, just turn your microphone back on and jump in and say, hey, Steve, and we'll redirect for you. Please don't today type questions in the comment section because I won't be monitoring that as we roll along. I'm going to take 2 seconds here to figure out how to share our screen again. La-di-da-di-da. And let's just get that out of the way. Okay, so the CPC module for professional sales is really not in, I think that probably any part of our topics for today, we could break it down and spend at least an hour on any one of the topics. And we're going to go through like 25 topics. So this is not intended to be the super in-depth sales training module where we actually practice our scripts and develop all of our, telephone techniques, but it is designed for us to really take a look at all of the aspects of sales in recruitment and staffing sales so that we can think about them and then go back into our business and hold some meetings and meet with our staff and talk to our bosses and our employees and ask ourselves some of these questions. A lot of this stuff is not designed for you to just kind of take it away, but it's intended to get you thinking and talking about, do we do that? Do we think about this? Do we try to get better at this? Are we doing it right? Are we doing enough? Are we measuring it? And all of that sort of thing. So we're going to really rock and roll at a fast pace through our content today. And of course, we all know, because we do this every time, that there are a bunch of CPC sessions that you need to have 5 of them of. You have a choice between recruitment and sales. And then the other 4 are mandatory before you can write the exam. And so moving right along, first we want to talk a little bit about sales roles and titles. And the interesting thing about the recruitment and staffing industry is that pretty much every job in the company, I think from the front desk through our account managers and our customer service and our recruitment people, all the way to the back office to payroll and invoicing, everybody's got some degree of sales responsibilities. There's not a real consistency in terms of the titles that we use for sales representatives. We've got account managers and business development reps, and usually business development reps are considered to be new business development reps. And then of course, we've got search consultants. So if you're an executive search or management search or search or an executive recruiter, a significant part, I used to say the guy with the most, or the person with the most orders wins. If you have no order, you've got nothing to recruit for. And so, bragging about our ability to recruit is great, but in the absence of an order, recruit for what? So we need to be able to make sales. And of course, recruiting in itself is a sales function because we are getting candidates to make decisions, to convert, to change jobs. And so there's a significant part of the sales responsibility in the recruitment side of the job also. I think it's would be crazy to have recruiters in your office that don't participate in sales training because a significant part of their role as staffing coordinators and recruitment coordinators and talent acquisition specialists all have a component of sales involved in them. And of course, in the industry, more particularly in smaller, independently owned companies and in companies that are involved in placement and search, we often use the term 360 desk or a full cycle desk. And so a 360 desk or a full cycle desk includes everything from the marketing activities and lead generation and client development and order generation and recruitment, and then the matching of those candidates to the orders that we get, and then sending those candidates out and then moving them through the cycle with the customer towards closing and then maintaining that client relationship. And so again, um, the 360 desk, and particularly in the executive search and management search side business, we've got sales involved in every aspect of the job. So we ask ourselves, what makes a great salesperson? Are they born or are they made? Are they, does it come from nature? Do they have these great salespeople have these innate uh, sales talents? You know, he or she could sell ice cubes to Eskimos, or so one of the other expressions. Um, um, or are they nurtured? Do we help develop and train people into great salespeople? Is it part of their personality or is it part of the process? So top salespeople typically possess a unique set of personality traits that are recurring and predominant and predictable in their personality. And then they combine these born nature and personality traits, they combine them with a practice set of skills that they learn and that they can follow in terms of a sales process. And then they become repetitive and become better and better and better as they do it. So if we were standing in the same room, I would stand there with the whiteboard now with my marker in hand, asking you to yell out, call out some of the attributes that you think are some of the greatest attributes in terms of personality traits of great salespeople. And I know that you would say things like you need to have a positive attitude and you need to be persistent and tenacious, but you also need to be friendly and able to develop rapport with potential customers and customers. That we often hear about great salespeople as being great listeners, but they're inquisitive listeners. I call it um, uh, active listening or guerrilla listening. We think about, I call it guerrilla listening, because we think of the way that gorillas communicate. There's a lot of sounds and body motion going on, but there's this communication. You can imagine them going back and forth with facial expressions and all kinds of things. And so guerrilla listeners or active listeners are often great salespeople because the customer thinks that you care and you understand and you're learning and it matters. And so inquisitive listening, an outgoing and active communicative style. Um, Great salespeople are often seen to be supportive and helpful. So they're problem solvers and helping customers to understand their problems, and yet they've got the confidence to be consultative in the way that they help their customers solve their problems. And they need to not only they need to be believers, that they believing in themselves and in their company, but they also need to be believable. And in order to be believable, you need to present and be an honest person, and then we can believe in what they say. And so, very often in sales, organizations use traits profiling to try to determine what are the predominant, predictable, recurring traits in a salesperson's personality. And I can tell you, I've done somewhere between 8 and 10,000 of these profiles using a profiling tool. And I can tell you I can look at a graph like this or look at a person's profile and tell you who the superstars are in our industry. And very often it's like, reading palms or, looking, inside people, because when you really see these traits in people, you can understand why, particularly in the recruitment and staffing industry, why they're successful. So we often see that great salespeople are results focused, assertive, self confident, bold people who seek challenges and take risks. Often he, the risk is taking the risk of hearing no, asking for an order, looking for people to present to them, eventually present to them what their objections and reasons are why they won't buy, so they've got something to overcome. Calling people and talking to people they don't know, going places where some other people might feel uncomfortable. These are all the assertive, risk-taking, visionary traits of people that are typically great salespeople. So the passive people who seek harmony and people who are diplomatic and cautious and conservative often are very likable people. They're highly respected people. My goodness, they're lovable and can be the kindest people in the world, but often that kindness without the boldness can get in the way because those people are not asking for the orders. And so while they're wonderful personality traits, they're not always the best personality traits of salespeople. So how do we take these assertive, bold, outgoing, risk-taking, challenging people and still make them likable? Well, they need to be sociable. They need to be congenial and social and persuasive, enthusiastic. They need to have what I call woo, the ability to woo people into their personal space. They're the people that initiate smiles. They're the ones that can make eye contact and make you feel like you care. They participate and they're expressive and participative and talkative. And so when you walk in a room, very often these people with these special traits, people are attracted to them. And so the interesting thing is, how can we have an assertive, aggressive person who wants to dominate and control the outcomes, yet be so sociable that we'll let them? These are the people who often are part of your group who need to decide where you're going to go for dinner, when the weekend is going to be, and where you're going to go for your annual gathering. Who's going to host the party and decide what the theme is going to be? And who's going to decide where you play golf and what the game's going to be, the competition will be. And somehow, these highly competitive, assertive, dominant people who are trying to control everything, instead of us saying, darn, they just want to control everything, they get in our way, they're the people that we want to drive things forward and decide where the party's going to be. And so combining together this assertiveness and sociability is a wonderful match of personality traits. And yet these people are, if we look at this graph over here, they are to the left of center. They are impatient people, multitasking, proactive, busy, on the move, active. Everything has a sense of urgency and a need for closure. They like the pressure to be on with deadlines to move things forward, because if they're over here and they have this systematic, methodical, oh, I put those two words together, process of being tolerant and a passive listener, not an active listener, then these highly patient people often don't move things forward. So we see great salespeople, many balls in the air, while they're waiting for one person to send them their resume. They're working on another deal um, they're constantly trying to move things forward through a process. And if you could imagine, for example, if you're having, let's think of a non-sales activity. If you're having construction done on your house and there has to be drywall and paint and electrical and plumbing and flooring and cabinet installs and all kinds of little things that are going to take place during this process. If we did them in a steady paced linear fashion, it might take us 2 years to do this modification on our house, because we're not going to start the paint until the drywall is finished, and we're not going to start this until that's finished. Whereas the multitasking person who's impatient is going to say, well, while this floor has got plumbing going on, this one has got electrical going, and this one's got drywall happening. And there's going to be all kinds of overlapping of activities taking place, multitasking, so that we shorten the sales cycle and more things can be done at once. And so the great salesperson has got 10, 15, 20, 40 customer prospects in the pipeline, all moving forward at different stages. And they're able to move from one to the other in order to drive that business forward so that they can get more closure in a fixed amount of time. Now, of course, we talk about detail orientation. So the person on the right of this scale over here likes structure and focus, and they cross their T's and dot their I's and do their research. And the person over here is highly flexible, big picture, and they don't get their documentation done and they throw things on the desk and I'll get to the details later. And neither one of those work great for superstar, rock star salespeople. Somewhere in the middle, where we know the value of being organized, is important so that we can recall information and find it and move forward. And so as we're multitasking, as an impatient person, we don't get stopped because we can't find the phone number, or we don't show up on time, or we don't have the customer information that we need for the presentation tomorrow in an efficient way, but not so detailed that we have paralysis by analysis. And so when we see super detailed people way over here who might be great in a research lab doing scientific research for the next thing that's going to save lives, and they're focused on every little detail of accuracy. If our salesperson acts like that, they do more research and more documentation, and they procrastinate towards the activities that are necessary to move our deals forward. And if they're way over here, they're so disorganized that they don't show up on time, or they can't remember their customer's name, or they can't find the phone number, or whatever it might be. And so having this nice balanced detail orientation somewhere in the middle is really important. Now, there is a trait that is measurable by behavioral psychologists that we refer to as behavioral adaptability. Now, this behavioral adaptability is on a scale from 0 to 10 of people in the world. And behavioral adaptability is a person's ability to modify their behavior without, if it's high behavioral adaptability, without a ton of stress. So a person with low behavioral adaptability is exactly the same all the time. So Spock in the original Star Trek, who was super logical, not super emotional, was always acting in a very logical, predominantly predictable, cautious fashion. And we knew that that person was going to act in that way all the time. And what made the drama of the show is that when they broke out of character and act emotionally or acted aggressively, that all of a sudden it was like, wow, Spock saved the day. And it made it a great TV show because he acted out of character. Well, when a person is so locked into their character, they have low behavioral adaptability and can't easily modify based upon changing circumstances, different types of customers, different customer profiles, personalities, buyers' personalities. And if a person is so freakishly versatile that they're like chameleons, then they become unpredictable in their behavior and appear to be untrustworthy. So we look for people in this sort of 5, 6, 7 in terms of behavioral adaptability, in an ease of which they can modify their behavior without feeling a whole bunch of stress to modify their behavior. And you know what I mean by stress? I don't mean stress like, break out into a rash and, have to go see the doctor or take time off work. I mean the kind of stress where it feels uncomfortable to act in a particular way. So you know that there are passive aggressive people who are super passive, and we call them passive aggressive because as soon as they start to try to control things, the passive person, their behavior feels kind of aggressive because it's out of context for their passive, accommodating, harmonious nature. And when we've got a super aggressive person trying to be very passive, they go the other way. They're like, they act like they don't care. And so having people act differently than what comes naturally to them is what we call a stress factor in their personality. So if you find people who are going to predictably act in a way that we need our salespeople to act without them having to consciously decide to modify their behavior and feel the stress of making that modified behavior, but they just naturally go there. In other words, the elastic band that in its full but not stretched state is the perfect state for a salesperson. If we have to act differently, it puts stress on the elastic band. If it's not in its full shape, it's too relaxed and it's not maximizing its potential. So we look for people with a nice degree of behavioral adaptability so that they can easily stretch to act in different ways without being so versatile that they're chameleon-like and so fixed that they can't change for changing circumstances. And then, of course, we look for people who can use emotion. We look at emotional control. We look at people who can use emotion in sales, i.e., use relationship, use personality, use fear of loss, other things. Let's, buy it now or the price is going to change tomorrow. We can use emotion to move them forward, but mostly more logical than emotional. Highly emotional salespeople tend to be um, high maintenance salespeople because as they fail, they feel and express their failure on their shoulder, on their chest. They show it hurts. They're emotionally depressed about failure. When someone says no, they take it personally. When a customer has got a logical reason why they can't move forward, the person heightens their emotional state trying to push them forward when really they should be using logic to overcome problems than using emotion to respond to these things. And remember, like, I don't know, like 7 out of 10, 9 out of 10 times we fail in sales. And we succeed only that 10% of the time or 20% of the time. And so having a highly emotional person who is set back by those emotional failures would not be the greatest thing, but we need to know how to evoke emotion in order to help people move towards closure. And then, of course, we always look for salespeople that have got some degree of creativity, that is looking at all of the aspects of the customer's need, wants to buy, their needs, wants, fears, goals, their objections, all of those things, and try to find creative ways so that we can help overcome our customers' concerns or solve the problem so that we can move sales towards closure. The We often talk about people and people say, well, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm in sales and marketing. Well, it's not usual that people are in sales and marketing. We say sales and marketing because as great salespeople, we hope and want our salespeople to utilize the tools of marketing to help them to make the sale. So we're going to address some of the things of marketing today. We're not going to talk about spend hours on or lots of time on how to be a better marketer. The focus today is on how to be salespeople. So it's not to mean that salespeople are responsible for designing logos, that's marketing, developing brands, developing advertisements, building and printing collateral. Those are all parts of marketing. But we do mean that the marketing representatives are responsible for developing these things, and the salespeople are responsible for using these things and for the marketing tools. And we want our salespeople to really be consistent. What is the brand? What is the marketing messages that the company wants to send? And does the salesperson strengthen that by using the same language, by talking about the same topics? and having the same conversations so that sales and marketing work in a unified fashion, moving together. So sales and marketing both impact lead generations. So sales refers to the activities that directly lead to the customer's purchasing, whereas marketing activities are the process of finding the people who are potential buyers. So marketing gets people interested, finds the people who are interested. Marketing communicates a message. Marketing helps us to discover and attract people who have an interest in buying. And the salespeople take those leads and convert them to a sale. So I just want to say this much, that when we hear salespeople complaining about the marketing, um, are they really? We just want to ask the question: are they really expecting the marketing to sell for them, or are they really expecting people to develop all of their leads for them? Because a passive um, uh, marketing is quite passive, and sales is quite assertive and quite outgoing. So marketing creates brand awareness and interest. Marketing is intended to attract these potential customers and to improve leads and lead generation, while the sales is the active process of proactively creating leads, going out and getting them, saying, hey, will you be a lead? And then convincing those people to buy. Um, and so, what are some of the activities of marketing? So we talk about advertising, branding, um, direct mail campaigns are marketing, email broadcast campaigns, sending out resumes through databases through contact management systems. That's all part of our marketing. Blogging and writing educational content. Pay-per-click advertising for Google, for example, is on internet advertising, is marketing. Events and event sponsorships and signs at golf tournaments and participation in those things are all part of our marketing. Developing our collateral, or brochures, or business cards, or items that we give away, those are all parts of marketing. Where our signs are located, how they look on the building, what the logo looks like, those are all parts of marketing. Writing white papers, creating educational materials, stuff that you can download from the website, public speaking events, these are all intended to help you to develop leads. Lead generation is not sales, it is marketing. A lot of times building credibility through certifications and licensing and quality programs and association memberships. These are all part of marketing. So how those tie together to our logos and our slogans and our taglines and things that we might put out there, like the Swiss Chalet discount coupons, and these are all parts of marketing. So our sellers are marketers too, because as professional sellers in the staffing industry, we enhance our company's reputation and our company's credibility, and we create opportunities for closing by actively participating in these marketing activities. So as salespeople, if we go to the golf tournament, if we speak at the event, if we post the white papers on our LinkedIn profile, if we participate in in questions and answer things in LinkedIn groups, these are all parts of the proactive activities that salespeople can participate in to assist with that marketing by handing out the marketing collateral. That's not sales. That is the distribution of marketing. So being aware of and remaining consistent with all of the things that our company does, and helping our salespeople to be aware of how all of these branding and marketing activities work, and then encouraging them to participate in by promoting it, sharing it, giving it out, using the same words in the same language, then our salespeople can participate by sharing on social medias, writing opinions, all these things at the bottom of the screen are how our salespeople help to promote our marketing. So how does that differ from what our salespeople do and what we really expect in sales? Now, by the way, I've been in this business for a long time. I got into this business in 1983, and I've seen everything under the sun in terms of people saying, never make us, grow your business, never make a sales call again, how to grow your business without, having to make cold calls. And quite frankly, that's just marketing BS. That is companies that are in the business of selling you and helping you to do your marketing. But at the end of the day, when that marketing call comes in, the person who takes the lead call has now got to convert that lead, that marketing lead, to a sale. And so let's focus on and we might call them customer service reps. We might call them the inbound desk. When we've got our recruiters, if they're not converting their candidates to take the jobs and go out on the interviews we want, it's because they're not selling properly. So when we think about sales, we think about telesales, and we think about cold calling or prospecting sales. A warm lead that comes in, say, from a referral without the follow-up is not sales. Until we follow up on it, it's just a lead. It's just a outcome from marketing. But until someone picks up the phone or gets on their email or goes for a visit and follows up on that warm lead, it is still marketing and not sales. And so things like door knocking, hello, can I talk to the person responsible for? Then it's not sales. So referral generation, asking your customer for referrals, is how we get our salespeople to participate in marketing. But until it goes into the CRM and we make the call and contact the referral, it is not yet sales. So a person on the inbound sales desk who's taking orders, once they take the order and they confirm the order, that's sales. Now, granted, some people might say, hey, it's not a really very aggressive sales. It's not very dynamic and outgoing sales. It's inbound sales. But the conversion of the person who expresses a want, a need, or desire, converting it to the order is the sales activity. So managing our CRM and keeping track of our data so that we can use it is considered part of the sales activity and will be used for marketing down the road. But CRM data management is putting our leads in, that's sales. Doing client presentations, that's sales. Going to a client and visiting them and asking your existing client who else buys in this company, who are the new buyers in the company, what are the additional services that we can introduce to a customer, that's sales. Writing proposals and finding the opportunity for proposals and submitting proposals is sales. Now, we might consider that proposal writer not a salesperson, but if they're not engaged with salespeople, then the proposal writers generally fail. Because we need to know, what problems are we trying to overcome? What are the issues we're trying to resolve? What are the dominant buying criteria of the customer? These are things that salespeople know. And so the part of preparing a submission or a proposal for a quote is sales. And some of the other aspects of sales are things like qualifying that lead. When the lead comes in and asking the customer the questions, do you have the authority to buy? Do you have the money to buy? Or do you buy the things that we sell? Qualifying that lead is part of sales. Learning and evaluating how customers buy, what they buy, what the process for their buying is part of the sales process. Discovering and overcoming the real objections that people have. Now, people might say, yeah, no, I'm not interested right now, or no, I don't have any needs right now, or no, it's too expensive for me, or it's against company policy. Very often, those are not the real objections. very often those are the things that customers say to try to get you to not sell to them. You know this, you've been there before. You've walked into the retail store knowing exactly what it is that you want. You want a shirt or a blouse, and it's got to be a particular color and a certain size, and it's got to have a collar or not have a collar, and it's got to look good with this jacket or that thing, that other piece of clothing. You know what you're looking for, and you walk in there and you're kind of browsing, but you don't want someone to try to sell to you. So the salesperson walks up to you and say, "May I help you?" And your response is, "No, I'm just browsing, thank you." And so that was a lot. So you knew what you wanted, you knew what you were looking for, you know what attracts you and what interests you. You know what you might buy, probably would buy. You know what you need and what you want. But we don't tell the truth to the seller by giving them a false objection. And so great salespeople have this ability and talent to discover what the real objection is so that they have the opportunity to solve it or overcome it. When we are involved in price discussions and negotiating terms of a deal, that's part of the sales process. And finding out that getting a person to agree and get the signature on the document, that's part of the sales process. Asking for and closing on the order, that's part of the sales process. Problem solving and relationship building is part of the sales process. And certainly following up to make sure that the deal stays in place through the customer's timeline of buyer's remorse or when it's not fully closed because the candidate hasn't started yet. This is all part of the sales process. So very often we use these terms, funnel and pipeline, and we use these terms together, often interchangeably, when they don't really mean the same thing. So a sales funnel refers to the process of starting with many leads and then, which we call top of funnel, and then refining those leads and eliminating the leads that are not qualified and that don't have needs uh, that will lead them to buy, until eventually we get out the bottom of the funnel, the fewer parts. So the sales funnel talks about many to few through this refining process. Whereas the sales pipeline is really not about eliminating leads, it's about taking people through a process from the beginning to the end so that we've got this systematic approach of moving them through a workflow that will take them to an intended result, which is the sale at the end. And so the sales pipeline, we might say there's a blockage in the sales pipeline. We're stuck in a part of the process, but we haven't eliminated them yet. And of course, the reality is that the two of these things are don't mean the same thing, but often they're working together at the same time. So this sales funnel, often you've seen it in every old school sales presentation. It starts off with trying to get as many leads as possible and then qualifying those leads. Now, salespeople don't like a huge top of funnel. Most salespeople don't like a huge top of funnel. What they want is a highly qualified lead so that every lead actually goes into a pipeline and that they're not having to vet through them to determine whether or not this is a real lead or not. So to give you an example, in one of the companies that I own, we get probably 7 out of 10 leads the customers can't afford to buy. Seven out of 10 people, we own a home care company, and 7 out of 10 people who call looking for some solution to help their parents or their grandparents or their spouse or a loved one, once they realize, even if it's just, minimum wage plus a markup, which is, let's say $30 an hour or something like that. Once they multiply it out by the number of hours of help that their parent actually needs, adds up to such a large dollar that they need to find another solution. It's not expensive per hour, it's expensive overall. And so once you get these leads that come in and you start to have a conversation about how much they need 40 hours a week or 80 hours a week of care, and you multiply that even by the smallest number possible, it adds up to a big number at the end of the month. And so 7 out of 10 leads can't even afford it. And so the people on our sales desk, our intake desk, take a look at this and say, how do we refine our leads so that we are not spending so much time qualifying them? Give us more qualified leads. It's a conundrum, because in the marketing world, as you try to pre-qualify your leads too much, you lose qualified leads also. And so salespeople have to have an ability to be able to qualify these leads and move them through the sales funnel so that they can actually get into the sales activity of overcoming objections, learning about the details, matching the solution, finding the candidate, presenting the candidate, getting the interviews done, getting job offers made. This is the sales activity that happens down here at stage number 3, which eventually converts into starts and dollars. So where do these leads come from? Well, we kind of only talked about this on the marketing side. They're coming from advertising and websites and referrals, and they're coming from just name recognition and search engine optimization and all kinds of things on the marketing side. And then over there on the sales side, we've got this cold calling and informed calls. People calling you who know exactly what they want and who you are and what you sell. And you've got sales campaigns where we're getting out to meet specific kinds of people, past clients, lists of clients. Sales generated leads are a result of an action and an activity that are proactive, and marketing generated leads are leads that come to you as a result of a proactive thing. So these terms, warm versus cold and active versus passive, don't mean the same thing at all. But they go together hand in hand. So, for example, an active leads are prospect or potential buyers who are actively seeking a solution now. They've got a job, or they've got jobs, or they've got a work process, or they've got a project, or they've got a plant, or they've got a need out there for temps out on the plant floor, or something coming up where they are actively looking for a solution. And yet a warm lead is something where it's not active. It doesn't mean, hey, I'm a buyer, I'm buying, is the active lead. And the warm lead is when you know something about them, you know enough about them that, or they give you just enough information that you can engage in a conversation, that you can determine whether or not they are active now or that they might be active at some point in time in the future. So warm active leads are the best leads because they're warm, you know something about them, and they're active, they're buyers. They're the ones that you can move through the process quicker. Whereas a passive leads are prospects or buyers who probably purchase your service, but they're not telling you that and they're not actively seeking. So they often start off cold, where you don't know much about them and you have to ask them questions and you have to go through this uncomfortable process that salespeople find the most difficult part. How do I get this person who I know nothing or very little about to disclose information to me? They're not coming to me. They didn't come and disclose I want to buy. And so we have to take this cold lead that we know very little about, engage in a conversation, warm them up, get them to disclose information to us so they can become warm, and then determine, are they active buyers or do they have a need? And so the salespeople love warm active leads, and salespeople tend to try to avoid or would rather go towards the warm active lead than to have the cold passive lead. So as we think about our marketing, how do we create warm active leads? This is in all of our marketing, we say, what kind of lead does this generate? Is it a warm active lead or is it a cold passive lead? So active warm leads allow the seller to more quickly engage in interest development and rapport. Whereas a passive and a cold lead requires the seller to investigate and find paths to engage in this stuff. So, uh, I mean, this is terminology. It doesn't help you be a better salesperson, but it does help you to have conversations in your office about what are we asking our salespeople to do? What kind of leads are we giving them? What are the techniques and processes that we have to deal with warm active leads? What are the techniques and processes that we have for cold passive leads? What are the marketing tactics that we have to develop warm active leads? What are the marketing active? And we tie together the sales process that is unique to each kind of lead. So now that we've got these leads coming to us, we have to ask ourselves, what have this conversation. Sit in the room. Get your salespeople together and sit there and say, hey guys, what do you think our differentiators are? How do we talk to our customers about what makes us different from the other guys? If there are 5 companies in my market, or 55 or 155 companies in my market, what makes us unique amongst all the others? And why would a customer even want to talk to us? So, are we members of ACSESS? Does that make us unique? Have you demonstrated your commitment to your CPC like you have? Does that make you unique? Your biggest, at the end of the day, you're going to find that your applicant tracking system is probably pretty similar to theirs, that the advertising that you have and the candidates who respond, probably pretty similar to theirs. Your ability to make phone calls and to talk to candidates, probably pretty similar to theirs. That when it comes time for you to talk about what makes you unique at the end of the day, maybe if there's 155 in the marketplace, you can come up with a whole bunch of features about your company and about your process and about your history and about your numbers and about your size that get you in the top 3 or 4 or 5. But what makes you unique from those other 3 or 4 or 5 is you. Nobody is like you. There's nobody who is you. You are one of a kind. So think about what it is that you believe in, about how you communicate, about how trustworthy you are, about how knowledgeable you are, about how well you keep in contact with people, how much you care. Nobody can talk about how much you care except for you, which makes you unique. So you start to think about these differentiators other than you that might get you in the top 5. They're the features and benefits of your company. They are how your company solves problems. They're how your company is unique that meets their criteria. So they might say, you have to have been in business for this, you have to have this much money, you have to be this financially credible, you have to have this kinds of candidates, you have to understand these kinds of candidates about this be so does your company meet the criteria? Are you in the 5 markets that the company, the 2 geographical markets that the company operates in? These are the criteria. And then how credible are you? So when buyers are looking at suppliers, they want to know about the credibility of the organization, about the history of your reliability. They want to know about what how your system and process meets with their rules and their policies, and how your rules and policies match up with their systems and their process. They look at companies for things like markup, savings, and efficiencies. They look for timing and availability. So when you talk about your company, these things on the left-hand side are the things that you talk about. And then when they're trying to figure out what differentiates the person, I got to tell you, timing is everything. Did you call them at the right time? I'm going to show you something on the next screen that is really an interesting fact. Did you call them at the right time? Did you make it convenient for them to buy? Do they trust you and do they have confidence in you? Are you able to nurture and develop relationships of trust and confidence? Is this relationship between you and the buyer, not necessarily between your company and their company, but also between you and the buyer? I encourage, there's a book I read in the 1980s that I still go back to called Anthony McKay, the McKay 66. It's the 66 things that you need to know about your customer so that you can develop a relationship. Things about, do they have kids, and where did they go to school? What job did they have before they came here? And what do they believe is important? So these are the things that matter in a relationship. The things that differentiate you as a person, as their buyer is looking to figure out what's the difference between you and the competitor, is your effort, how hard you try. They take a look at your knowledge and experience. How well do you know their industry? What did you do in their industry? What other customers do you have in their industry? What type of people do you recruit in their industry? What is your area of expertise and knowledge? So we often want to take a look at company to company. Does our company meet the criteria that they have in order to be a legitimate supplier with them? And then when it gets down to you as a person, do you meet all the criteria there? So what customers want when they buy is different. What they need and want. And I have the need, want, fears, guilt, holes, desires. In the temporary and contract business, they're looking to fulfill short-term requirements, and they're looking to transition in between replacement people. So when someone leaves and the new person starts, can they come in for 3 weeks or a month or 2 months until the new person can start? Very often, contract and temp roles are in non-core roles. So having the right conversations about their roles. When customers are uncertain of what the duration of their need is going to be, they're going to look at temp and contract. Quick response times matter in temp and contract. Minutes. Answer the phone or you're dead. If a customer is looking for temporary people and they phone you first, if you don't answer the phone and they leave a voicemail and it's the first or second or third time they've called you, there's a pretty good chance as soon as they hang up, if they leave a voicemail, there's a pretty good chance that when they hang up, they're calling your competitor, because time matters. And I have the expression, time kills deals, in the temporary and contract business. So they want to be protected against termination. So don't want to hire somebody and then have to terminate them and pay a severance package 3 months later. They might have hiring restrictions and policies and things going on inside their company. So asking them questions about, what are your policies about hiring now? What are your hiring plans? What is your budget for next year? Are you guys authorized to grow? Do you expect to grow? What percentage are you going to grow? All of these things matter. And sometimes temporary is the transition, and contract is a transition that gets them from where they are today to where they are tomorrow. Very often, temporary and contract is driven by supply availability. They'll take a temp because they cannot find the person that they need in the permanent job. And of course, there's all kinds of people out there that are trying to use temporary help and contract help to save them money. And yet on the recruitment side and the search side and the permanent side, it's often a different conversation. It's about supply availability. That's usually the first thing. Usually the first and most predominant reason why somebody's going to use a search firm is because they can't find the best person for the role on their own quickly. Often they want to protect their confidentiality. And so this time savings of doing it quickly is important to them too. There's some cost savings because very often if you do it 100 times a year and they do it once every 3 years, then you can do it more cost effectively than they can do it by the time they rejig and get everything going in their process that they don't typically do. Unlike temporary help, very often search is done in their core roles or their specialized roles. and they want a professional process that you can bring to the table. So have a conversation with your customers and with your sales rep about what's this professional process that we're going to follow, because they want to have pride in the fact that you're going to represent them in a highly professional way. Maybe it's that your access to a pool, a talent pool that they don't have access to, and sometimes it's got a lot to do with guarantees. Now take a look at this highlighted yellow thing on the screen. This is what I mentioned on the last screen. 70% of buyers of temporary staffing, contract staffing, and search change suppliers or take on new suppliers because they are indifferent. They are not particular at all about who solves their problem. They don't care. They can't tell the difference between you and your competitor. Once you make it past 3 screens ago, all of those criteria that match your company's criteria match with their company's criteria. Once your personality matches with the things that they look for in a person, and you get into the top 3 or top 5, they couldn't care less if it was you or the other person. They are indifferent as to who supplies to them. And so think about what there was a detergent back in my earlier days called ABC detergent that had the same colors on their box as Tide, but their whole sales feature was the 2 twins who got dirty, and then you took off their shirt or their clothing, and one went into Tide and one went into the washing machine with ABC. And at the end, the phrase was, "I can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference?" Because they know that at the end of the day, whatever the problem is that needs to be solved, and so long as it does what you need them to do, 70% of the buyers don't care. They're indifferent towards you. So you're going to need to find people that maybe don't have an internal resource or supply, that they can't do it themselves. You're going to need to maybe find customers who are dissatisfied with their internal process, or maybe they're dissatisfied with one or some of their current suppliers. You're going to need to be there at the right time when it's convenient, when they have a need. But at the end of the day, you're not so special. You're indifferent. You just made it the same as everybody else. And I hate to tell you that, because our salespeople are going to tell you, "Oh, we're so successful because we're special." But I'll tell you what, when you first got those customers, it wasn't because you were special. When you first got those customers, it was because you met all of the criteria, most of the criteria, and they couldn't tell the difference between you and somebody else. And they gave you a chance because you were there at the right time. So we take a look at processes like tenders and bids and qualifications for submissions. It's got nothing to do with whether or not they're indifferent towards you or not. It's about the number of points that you got. And price is often not the differentiating factor. It is only the differentiating factor when you cost too much. It is usually not the differentiating factor because you cost less. You don't need in our business to be sometimes you do, but most of the times you don't need to be the cheapest. Most of the time you need to be not too expensive. Because once you become the same price as everybody else, they can't tell the difference and they're okay with that. So usually when you're 20% or more than the competitors, some people might say 10% or more than the competitors, then you might price yourself out of a market. But usually anything under 20% creates an indifference. So they look for the person, the relationship, the trust, the confidence. They look for a response. They might respond to an offer that you put in front of them. "Here's my candidate. Take a look at my candidate. If you look at my candidate, will you give me the job order and I'll introduce you to my candidate?" Sometimes that in the right timing is important. Customers sometimes look towards innovative features that imply a benefit, like an applicant tracking system or profiling tools or interviewing methods or a technology or your guarantees or your payment terms. Sometimes they look towards features, but usually those features need to be just good enough. It might be that you can sell on that feature, that you can tell them how great you are to get you in the door to have the conversation. But at the end of the day, you need to make yourself just good enough and then nurture and develop a relationship of trust and confidence. So we often see price shoppers out there, and price shopping is very often the untrue, not real objection. What they really are looking for is efficiency and value. And it's imagine having a conversation with saying, if you could have the conversation about how much did it cost you to fire that person? How many millions of dollars in sales did your customer lose because they had a mediocre or a poor salespeople person for a year and a half on the desk? How many great customer service reps, administrative staff, and other salespeople quit your organization or became disengaged because they had a terrible coworker to work with, that mediocre salesperson who wasn't great, maybe the poor salesperson who worked for your company for a year and a half? How many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars did it cost your organization by the time you paid them a severance package and lost your customers and lost your productivity and lost your other salespeople? Very often, the time that it takes to find the right talent through an efficient process gives them a reliable solution that they look for, and that price isn't really the factor. It can be a factor when it's too much, but usually not a differentiating factor because it's less than the other people. You got to trust me on this. You got to be inexpensive enough, not the most inexpensive. I've been doing this for 45 years, sold billions of dollars, literally billions. Some years, 500, $600 million in sales. And it wasn't because we were the least expensive on the block. Sometimes price will get you in the door, but it doesn't necessarily keep you in the door. So now we got to talk about territory planning. Do we know what we sell? And I always say to people, first, you got to define what you sell. This is for you and your salespeople. This isn't for you to use as your sales pitch to your customers, but for you and your salespeople. How often do you sit in the room and say, can we define exactly what we sell? Who buys? What is the profile of the companies, the organizations, the governments, the buyers? What is the profile of who buys exactly what we sell? And so, can we also define why those particular buyers buy? What's driving them to buy? So once we can define what it is exactly that we sell, that we like to sell, that we're good at selling, who buys exactly what we sell, and why they buy, then all of a sudden, selling becomes a whole bunch easier. So define what you sell with a sales statement. We say to people, write a sales statement so that it's clear. Now, again, this is not an elevator pitch. This is not the thing. An elevator pitch is like the thing you say to people in the first 30 seconds to get their interest. This is for you and your salespeople to sit at the table in the boardroom, to write it down, to say it, to repeat it over and over again. For your salesperson to ask the question, when I'm making this call, does it fit into my definition of what you sell? Create this sales statement as to who it is. And so an example at the bottom of the page would be, we provide, say you're in the light industrial temp business. We provide light industrial temporary staffing services to large businesses with repeat multiple orders that are all the same and similar, with warehouses and logistics operations, to help them respond quickly and cost effectively to unpredictable changes in both their supply and demand side. And so if there are 50 jobs that are exactly the same that you can put out there just like that to customers, who are those buyers? What are we selling and who are those buyers? So to go into those customers and sell accounting services when you only provide one accounting person a year, not a great idea. Other examples, just to give you some other examples for other verticals and industries, are we provide confidential specialty recruitment services to assist companies in finding highly specialized and difficult to discover accounting and finance staff, if that's what you do on the search side. Or if you're on the IT and contract side, we understand and expertly source and match highly specialized contract information technology professionals to our customers' projects. Do we have customers with projects so that we can effectively help them get their projects completed with the right skills on time and on budget? So we sit down with our salespeople and say, is this what you're selling? And are you doing it in a geography, by the way, when you're in the temp business, matters a lot. You go 20 miles, 30 miles, you're probably taking yourself out of the market. The first thing the person says is, well, you're recruiting temp people who come in for an interview 30 miles away and you expect them to come over here to come to work. So geography matters. So that's why people have got remote offices and satellite offices, and they go places because geography matters in the temp business. In the executive search and technical business, it doesn't matter as much. You can be recruiting from Edmonton and putting people in Fort McMurray. You can be recruiting people from Vancouver and putting them in northern British Columbia. That's possible when you get into light industrial type of work. And so we take a look at our target market and we ask ourselves, what's the industry that we serve? What's the process that industry uses? What's the technology that industry or those companies use? What are the company's size of the companies we sell to? What is the volume of business that they buy? What is the revenue size of those companies? To define our target markets and to be selling to boutique and to global companies. And this gets confusing. Really defining who your target market is matters. And then we have to decide what the vertical is. Is it temp? Is it contract? Is it perm? Is it contingent search? Is it retained search? Is it a payroll business? Is it a PEO type business? And they're all different. And to try to tell companies that you do all of them usually doesn't work that well. And if you're wondering why you don't have any PEO businesses, because the PEO companies have got all the PEO business. And why the PEO companies don't get executive search and retained search is because they're PEO businesses. They're not retained search. I know this. At one point in time, I had 450 recruitment desks across the country in Canada. 450 people recruiting. And we could go into one of our 7,000 customers, and if we sold them oil and gas pipe fitters, I couldn't get their temp business. And if we sold somebody executive search through our executive search group, I couldn't get their office admin business. Once they know you for what it is that you do, focus on that thing. To think that you can be everything to everybody is a misnomer. It is not true. It doesn't happen. I mean, it happens. From time to time, anything can happen. But to build a business model around being everything to everybody really doesn't work. Now, the interesting thing was that, companies that I've consulted with and we've worked with and we've helped do sales training with and so on, that sometimes they're so big that they do 10 things, but their division that specializes in temp, say light industrial, is so big that's bigger than, a specialized company. And so they focus that division like it's a specialized company on that particular vertical, which is fine. We've got to ask ourselves, what discipline and roles do we fill? And so we also got to take a look at and sit down with our salespeople and sit down with ourselves and ask, what's my process? There's no silver bullet to selling. There's no one way to do it. But you can't do all the ways also. We have to say, are we an individual order business? Do we go out and get one order, two, three, four, five orders at a time? Are we constantly looking for new business because the customers that we have give us 5 or 10 orders a year? And so we're constantly having to add new business to um, our list of customers? Or are we a repeat order customer who's got a small number of huge customers that give us repeat orders, like I mentioned, the light industrial company that might take 50 or 40 people to work in their pick and pack in their distribution warehouse? Or is it in a call center where there's 60 or 80 desks that need to be filled? Or is it in the nursing business where we're going to put 50 nurses that all have the same skills in one place? Is it repeat bulk orders or is it individual new business orders? And you can do both, but I'm going to suggest to you that the salesperson probably doesn't excel at both. The salesperson who's really good at going after major, large repeat order customers is probably really good at that. And they've got a system and a process they've learned. And the ones who are able to go out and get new business are probably good at that. Or are you like companies in Ottawa that thrive on federal government RFPs and proposals? Or are you like companies in Toronto that get on to become a vendor of record where you're one of 5 or one of 10 companies that all get access to all the same orders all at the same time because they become one of 5 companies that are the vendor of record? In other words, the buyer is allowed to buy from those 5 companies and only those 5 companies. But on an individual order by order basis, there's really no selling until you get down to the closing of the order on an individual candidate. Is your business model master vendor or sub supplier? Are you the master vendor inside a company that customer that uses 20 vendors because they've got $50 million worth of business, or 15 or $40 million worth of business, and the master vendor is the primary controller of all of that, and that they use VMS tools, vendor management tools, to help control it? Are they the single source supplier in the master vendor? Or is it a sub supplier who's learned how to develop relationships and work as a sub supplier, supplying people to their competitor, to the master vendor, who's no longer their competitor, but their business partner? Is this your business model? You're trying to be a master vendor and a sub supplier at the same time? Doesn't usually work that well. But you can be a sub supplier to 20 master vendors, and you can't be the master vendor for 20 customers. It doesn't usually work that you're a sub supplier and a master vendor with different customers at the same time. Figure out your space. Are you a part of a global, national, or regional customer that has got corporate clients that are sold globally or nationally, and your branch needs to comply with a whole bunch of business terms and tools and processes and prices? Or are you independent and you go get your own business on your own? Because how you deal with your salespeople, what they do from day to day, will be different. And we talked about vendor management systems. Are you a vendor management system seller? Do you have your own VMS or licensed product? Or will you use 20 different VMS? Are you an adopter? Any customer might have their own VMS tool, and you've got the technology and the business process that you can adopt anybody else's VMS tool, and you can integrate with it and work within it so that the orders, so every day your orders are coming from 5 or 4 or 20 different VMS tools, and that you figured out how to work with all of these various VMS tools. So are you a supplier of VMS or are you an adopter of VMS? Doesn't usually work that you're a supplier and an adopter. So figure that one out. And how your salespeople develop their day and structure their time and what they do and what their skills are will matter whether you're a VMS seller or a VMS adopter, or whether you don't participate in VMS at all. We've got people on inbound desks who take orders, and we've got other people who are outgoing, proactive, outside people and business developers. different types of sales skills. So let's talk about what a qualified buyer looks like. Does this, and again, these are the kinds of conversations that you can spend hours with your staff, trying to make your life easier and more productive. Does this prospect already buy? You know, there's a story about the salesperson who went to the Canadian shoes, the new sales rep was sent to Australia to try to expand their market globally. And the salesperson goes out into the outback and finds the outback Aboriginal people, and then finds a telephone booth or gets on their cell phone or whatever and phones back to Canada and says, send me a container of every kind of outdoor shoe you can possibly think of. Nobody here has any shoes. The world, Australian outback is our market. It's unlimited. The millions of shoes that we can sell. And then 6 months later, that person's replacement is there. And that salesperson no longer works for the company. And the replacement person says, send us empty containers so that we can ship these shoes back home again. I've gone out into the outback and nobody buys or wears shoes. So it's interesting that we take a look at the exact same scenario and we perceive it in two different ways. And the truth is that we tend to fail when we spend all of our time trying to convince non-buyers to buy. If you spend all of your time trying to convince a company that they really should use employment agencies and recruitment and executive search and pay fees, you're probably not going to get very many orders. And if you went out there and companies used all of their own people all of the time to fill all of their orders, and you try to convince them to build 5 or 10% of their workforce as a temporary workforce, they probably will never buy from you. As a matter of fact, they're probably going to buy once in a while from you, and they're going to be really problematic because they haven't integrated it as part of their strategic recruitment plan. So they're going to find all the reasons why it's wrong, and they're going to be doing everything they possibly can to not use your service, because in their mind, success is not having to need you. And so ask yourself, does this prospect buy? If they already buy, more likely to be qualified. Do they have needs? So sometimes prospects buy, but it's not, the timing's not right, and they don't need until the fall, or need until next year, or need until the recession's over, or needs something. Are the needs consistent with what you sell? So we go back to that question from a few screens ago. Have you defined what you sold, and have you defined what the buyers buy? And do they match? Is the contact that you're dealing with authorized to decide? Are they an influencer or are they a decider? Is the contact a decision maker that you can help overcome the objections and deal with them and they can issue a purchase order? Or are they simply going to have to go tell the boss or introduce it to somebody else? You need to be dealing with decision makers. Are there other stakeholders? Are there other people at the barbecue? Does procurement get involved? Does human resources get involved? Do the department managers and users get involved? Do the IT people need you to integrate to their VMS tool or to their system or to something? Do their accounting and finance people need you to upload your invoices electronically and give them electronic timesheets and have digitally signed timesheets? Who are the other influencers in this decision-making process, or are you just dealing with somebody who's got their own unique wants and needs, but doesn't satisfy the needs of the rest of the organization? Are there vendor criteria that you can meet? So those examples I just gave, do you have to be able to integrate to their accounting and finance system so that you can upload your invoices? Do you have to integrate to their technology so that you can get electronically signed timesheets? Do you have to have a certain amount of insurance? You have to have $2 million or $5 million worth of insurance and special kinds of insurance in order to qualify to be a vendor on their vendor of record list. Is the prospect financially capable of paying for what you sell? And is there already a supplier that the buyer is committed to and they're just going to play along with you, but always continue to go back to their suppliers? So before we take a break, let's talk about some of the terms that are often used, sometimes misused in our office. We talk about a customer profile. So this is about, what do they buy? When do they buy? Do they have the money to buy? What technology do they use to buy? What are the job titles that they buy? What are the skills and certifications of the people that they hire? What is this customer profile? We talked about a target market that's not just geography. It's industries and people and size of company and so on. We talk about market share. What is our goal and objective? If our goal and objective is to find existing buyers, then we really need to be focused on how do we attract and win market share? Because if we spend all of our, I don't know if some of you are old enough to know, but if we go back to the beginning of cellular telephones and cellular services in Canada, AT&T and other US companies came into Canada and tried to open up new markets to convince people to buy. But cell phones back then were like $2,000. And they had these huge batteries that had to go under the seat in your car. And they were hard there, and you held this big thing, that, and so they spent all their time in their advertising trying to convince people of the benefits of a cell phone, about the safety and about how you can make sales calls on you're on the road and how you can call your mom. People don't talk about the benefits of cell phones now. We talk about price and features. We all want a cell phone, but every one of those Cantel and AT&T and all of those companies that started off in the cellular market, they went out of business, moved back to the United States, or got gobbled up by the 3 or 4 current suppliers that exist in the marketplace, because the people who came in trying to create market growth, to create a market, instead of getting market share, they tried to create a market, they all failed. So do we look for organizations for industries that have got growth built into them? We're not going to help them grow. We got to find industries that have got growth built into them. Are they electric cars? Are they some kind of, what kind of industries have got market growth built in? Those are our targets. When we talk about our customers and customer penetration, we got to ask ourselves, what percentage of my customer do I do business with? Am I dealing with all the buyers in the company, in all the disciplines, in all the verticals, for temp, contract, perm, PEO, whatever, inside the company? Has each of my specialty divisions dealing with the specialty areas inside the customer? Are there 2 people sitting at desks beside each other? This one buys from you, that one buys from your competitor. Do you even know that person's name? Have you figured out what the barriers to entry are that are stopping you from getting into these customers? Is it technology? Is it money? Is it your relationship? Is it your insurance? What is stopping you from to get in there? And once you get in there, are you able to build systems and processes and technologies and things that will make it difficult for other people to get in, which is what we call a barrier to exit, which means, for example, think about a big company that leases space in a building, and they've done all kinds of leasehold improvements, and they've got furniture and technology and cables and network computer rooms and all kinds of things, and they've got signage on the outside of the building, and all of their employees that they've hired over the years conveniently have moved and live in a place so they can get to and from in the big city or wherever you are, to and from work conveniently. And then all of a sudden your lease is up and you need to move somewhere. Well, think about all the barriers to exit. If you're going to leave this location in downtown Toronto and move to Oakville, what percentage of your really important customers, employees, are going to quit? That's a barrier to exit. There's barriers to leaving the location. What have you in one of our businesses? We've got this thing called the family room, because it's a home care business. And so the whole family can log in and take a look at schedules and what mom and dad are eating and what's happening. And they've got technology on their phone and they approve time on their phone and they can see with their GPS where the caregiver is. And so then along comes a new company and a new company says, can we have your business? And they say, I don't really want to leave my current company because I've got all of these things that I don't want to give up. Do you have those things? If I go to give these up, it's going to be really difficult for us to change. And the caregiver loves, my parents love the caregiver. If I change companies, I have to get a new caregiver. That's a barrier to exit. Think about everything you can do with your current customers that your salespeople can participate in to help you to learn about what the barriers to exit should be. And so what becomes your competitive advantage so that you can differentiate yourself from other people. So last thing before we got 3 more minutes before our break time. Are you using CRM tools, your customer relationship management tools? Have you integrated them into your process? You use them for list management and for social media engagement and for email marketing? And can you build templates and collateral that are all used, all your marketing stuff used in there so that it's consistent and persistent and timely? Um, CRM tools and lead management tools and all the technology that you use need to integrate with your salespeople in such an intrinsic way that it allows them to continue to market and sell your brand and use the tools that are available so that they're very super efficient. So I'm not going to spend days on CRM tools because we could literally get vendors in here and we could talk for a whole day. We'd have a whole conference on CRM tools. Going to ask you the question though. Do you and your salespeople sit once a month and talk about all the features and benefits of your CRM tools so that it engages your salespeople and your customers to manage your lists, to use your social media, to use your email, and to use your collateral in an effective way? And if your salespeople are not knowledgeable of all of the features and benefits of that, then your salespeople are underperforming. Okay, here we are. It's 2:28. We're going to come back. We're going to come back here in 10 minutes. So we'll give it 12. So at 2:40, you guys know the rules. We're going to put ourselves on hold for 10 minutes. Try not to leave the room. Getting back in again can sometimes be a problem. Mute yourself out. Turn your cameras off if you want. I'm going to do the same on my end. And I'll see you back here at 2:40 in 12 minutes, and we'll finish up for the day. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you soon. Give people a chance to stop and ask a couple questions before we start back up at a rapid pace. Anyone? We're all good? Okay. Any comments? Too fast, too slow?
They're good.
They're all good. Okay. Excellent. Well, we've got a bunch more stuff to get through, so Our goal is to get finished on time for 4 o'clock today. So we often like to talk about our salesperson's toolkit. And again, it strongly encourage you to sit with your salespeople or sit with your sales manager and to have very structured conversations about how you integrate all of these things. How do we integrate our CRM technology with um, making these introductory calls? How are they documented? How do we know who we're going to call? How do we know when to call them back? How do we follow up with them? Have we got templated email campaigns that are designed to be the first email after the call, second email after the call, third email after the call? We also want to have conversations about what it is that we're allowed to promise people. And I like to call them minor promises. And I use the expression promise maker, promise keeper. Salespeople often, when they're attempting to differentiate themselves and become unique, one of the ways they do it is to make a promise and then fulfill that promise. Now, the promise can come simply as, when I'm finished with this, I'm going to send you a text message to your cell phone. Can I get your cell phone number? I'm going to give you my contact information so you can just store it right in your phone. That way, you know when I'm calling that it's me. And the person says, sure, I'll give you my cell phone. Now you got their cell phone. And then you send them a text message right away. Promise. I made a promise to you, I'm going to send it to you within 1 minute of getting off the phone. You send it within 1 minute. If you're promising you're going to send them, a contract or a document or something, a resume, then you get it to them within the promised time. So fulfilling a promise is often an integral part of the toolkit. Inviting people to become connected to you on LinkedIn or other social media platforms is really important. Sending them collateral so that your messages that you're sending can be reinforced with the professionalism of the company collateral, the brochure, the folder, the electronic business card, whatever it might be that you can send to them to create a consistency in the message. You want to then schedule a visit with them to come to their office, or for them to come to your office, or to meet them at an event. And then, of course, setting a schedule for regularly intervaled follow-up calls. Let's see if I can make this thing work. I always say to people, because if you remember, we said earlier on, and I know that it hurt our feelings, that customers are indifferent towards us. Well, one of the things that we need to come to terms with is that they don't remember us. When we're making new calls to people, they remember sort of in principle. When you call them back, oh yeah, we triggered that memory. But I can guarantee you that a huge percentage of the people that we talk to for the first time, if you asked them your name, if somebody asked them your name a week later, they're not going to remember. They're going to have to go back and look it up. They're going to have to find something. And so what we need to do is we need to make our name and our company name so convenient that it is really easy to find. So every call has got a follow-up email. Every telephone call has got a follow-up text message. Every time we have an opportunity to get them to create a hyperlink or a logo or to see our slogan with your name frequently everywhere, so that eventually they just remember it. And if they don't remember it, they can find it. They can find it in their email. They can look up a keyword. They may not even, they're going to, what is it? Is it the word staffing? That might be the only word they remember. They might remember one word in the name of your company. They might remember your first name. So we ask the question, is our email signature, does it contain everything that it needs to contain? Our email address, our phone numbers, our mobile number, our office number, our website address. Is it on everything? When we use hyperlinks and logos and slogans, are they everywhere, and are they frequent, and are they consistent, and are they easy to find, and are they convenient? And then we have to ask the question, is it integrated? Is there a way that we communicate with our customers through our email app on our phone? Is it the same email app that we use on our tablet? Is it the same email app that we use on our laptop? Is it the same email or a different email app that we use in the office? Can we send emails from webmail and sometimes from Outlook? Can we send them a message that goes out of our system? Are we using, an ATS or a CRM that we can send emails right out of the system? Do they have our email signature embedded in it so it defaults there automatically? And I guarantee I receive emails every single day from people that do not have their email address, their phone number, and their cell phone number and their office number in the signature part. Is it set up so that the replies also have your signature in it? Because a lot of us set it up so that our send has our email signature in it, but we think, oh, well, we don't want to fill up space or something. Are we using HTML signatures? And if we're using HTML signatures, are we embedding our phone number or something in an image? Because if we're embedding our phone number in an image, the customer can't swipe it and copy and paste it. It's in an image, it's not text. So, do you know that with AI, tons of iPhone technology and Android technology recognizes phone numbers and email addresses, and we know that the software that we're using to scrape our resumes, it can figure out who a person's email is and address is and their phone numbers and put it in the right fields. Well, that's happening with our cell phones and the applications that we use every single day. If you're embedding information into images, then the AI can't scrape that stuff and put it into a new contact. Do you know you could just receive an email from somebody and right click on their email address and go add contact and it goes into your database in your iPhone? I mean, they can do the same thing. How easy is it, are we making it so that every way in which we communicate with these people makes it easy for them to retrieve and find conveniently your contact information, keeping in mind they won't remember your name. Not until they dealt with you like 10 times. They may not remember your name. The biggest complaint that people get that I hear nowadays is from salespeople who say, oh, there's gatekeepers and roadblocks and voicemail and people don't return their phone calls. How do we get through to all these things? Well, you know what? It was the same 25 years ago and 30 years ago. Now you've got 10 ways that you can contact them. You can contact them through WhatsApp and through Facebook Messenger and through your text messaging and through email and through LinkedIn and you name it. You've got all kinds of ways that you can connect with people nowadays. Back in the early days, you if they didn't answer the phone, they didn't even have voicemail. So people complain about gatekeepers, but this is just modern complaints, complaining about something that we use the same old skills and approaches. That first off, we understand that gatekeepers, the people who are answering the phone at the front desk, administrative assistants, they weren't told by their supervisors, by their bosses, the person they report to, I want you to protect me from everybody who phones. They weren't told that. They assume that. I don't ever remember a CEO or a CFO or a manager saying, by the way, I want you to screen all my calls and never let important people through. They might say that for a meeting. I'm going to a meeting. If my spouse calls, if my kid calls, let them through. Other than that, hold my calls for a while. But they don't tell you to screen out salespeople. So the question is, how do we engage the gatekeepers in a way? How do we use voicemail in a way? How do we use email spam blockers in a way, or get to the top of people's email inbox so that we can have real conversations with people? So first off, find out what people's direct dial numbers are. So if you can get their cell phone number, that's great. If you can find out what extension they're at, they're great. If they've got a direct in dial number, that's great. Keep in mind that people nowadays are using VoIP technology that typically everybody has their own cell phone number or their own phone number, and that it's following them around and it's forwarding to their cell phone. Find out what that direct dial extension is. Plan the time for the best chances of getting an answer. What is the best time of day for a warehouse manager to answer the phone? What is the best time of day for a CEO or a CFO to answer the phone? What is the best time of day and day of the week for an HR person to answer the phone? If you know and can learn through your relationship with these people that they've got, team meetings every Monday morning at 9 o'clock, well, don't be phoning at 9 o'clock on Monday mornings. If we know that at 7 o'clock in the morning is the best time to get a hold of the warehouse manager, the moment they arrive, the minute that the warehouse opens, that's when they deal with that stuff, then phone them at 7 o'clock in the morning. If we know that the CEO or the CFO works till 6 o'clock at night, call their direct extension at 6 o'clock at night. Learn the time of day. And if you can't learn it, try a different time of day. If you've set up your schedule so that every day at 10 o'clock in the morning you're making sales calls and you're not getting a hold of somebody, don't keep phoning some people at 10 o'clock in the morning. Try 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 4:30 or 6 or 7 a.m. If you don't know the extension of the person, you get their voicemail and you don't want to leave a voicemail again, or you don't want to leave a voicemail, hit 0. Very often, these systems are set up so that you hit 0, it falls back to an attendant. Try an assistant or a coworker and ask them and say, hey, is Steve in? Do you know if Steve's at his desk this afternoon? I'm trying to get a hold of him. Ask them if they can do that. People say, I don't like leaving messages. Leave a message. Nowadays, your phone number is likely to be recorded and it'll show that you phoned in their system message. And if they see you phoning and not leaving a message, they're just going to get angry with you because they're going to say, this person is calling. They won't even tell me the purpose of their call. What? They can't be that important. Send an email to them and say, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you. I know that you're really busy. Can I suggest a time? Are you available this afternoon at 5 o'clock? Or maybe tomorrow morning at 9. Give them 2 choices. See if they'll respond to you by leaving a message and suggesting and scheduling a time. You can use, a lot of people are using these meeting schedulers, that just click below and you can automatically pick a time. It's kind of impersonal and a little bit unprofessional. It's the kind of thing that marketers use to try to set this stuff up. But, you can use those. But you can also send a person a meeting invitation, and you can say, hey, here's a meeting invitation for tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. If this time's not convenient for you, just recommend one back again. And then it'll go on, the technology, it'll go automatically into their schedule. As soon as they receive it and recommend a time back again, it'll go right into their schedule. And the chances of you actually having that conversation are going to take place. Then I want you to remember back, I don't know, some people might be too young, but remember back to the time when you got your first answering machine. I remember it. I remember when my first answering machine was so sophisticated, it had 2 cassette tapes. One for the outgoing message to be recorded and one for the incoming messages to be saved on. And my wife and I sat in the living room with it there, taking turns trying to leave a professional message. So, hello, have you reached the Jones residence? I'm sorry, it's unfortunate we can't take your call right now. If you leave a message after the tone, one of us will get back to it at our earliest opportunity. Don't forget to leave your phone number and the reason for the call. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. And so, nowadays, that's pretty straightforward. We've done it so many tens of hundreds of times or thousands of times that we can leave a voice message really easily. But back then, it took my wife and I 20 times, and we laughed at how stupid we sounded. And we tried again, and we tried to do them together. And it was so cute. We were terrible at it. This is what you sound like when you leave messages on a prospective customer's voicemail when you haven't practiced it 1,000 times? You sound dumb. You sound like you don't know what you're talking about. Prepare a script. Practice it. You can modify it. That message that I just gave you about, hi, this is Steve Jones. I'm sorry I missed your call. Unfortunately, I'm on another call right now, but I'll get back to you really quick if you leave a message with your phone number and the reason for your call. That is not the way I normally leave my message, but I've left so many of them, it sounds okay. Practice. Use a script. Get your voice. Use your intonation. Think about getting louder and faster and slower. And think about the cadence of your telephone number. My phone number is 416-565-9638. That's 9638. It's 416-565-9638. Now, if you've got a pen in your hand, you wrote that down okay. I knew a guy who worked for a temporary help company. He was the president. I once had to listen to his voice message like 10 times because he said 2 numbers slowly and 5 numbers quickly. Not 3 and 4, 2 and 5. I wasn't used to the cadence. And it sounded wrong. I didn't get it. Think about the cadence of your voice, the intonations in your tone, the speed of which you leave the numbers. Practice saying your phone number or your email address or your name so that they can understand it and hear it. I know that on our intake, one of our intake lines in our company, sometimes we have to listen to a message 6, 7, 4, 5 times to try to get close to what that potential prospect's name might be when we call them back, because they're not practiced at leaving messages. I'm not saying have a script and sound like you're scripting your messages. I'm saying build a script and learn how to do it and then make it come natural to you, and then you can have modifications to your script. Use your research about the company so that you can say something to them that matters. It drives me crazy. I get phone calls, several phone calls a week from people that are recruiters calling me, and somehow they get my number, which is fine. I could put my number everywhere. And they say something. I can't understand their name. I can't understand their company name. And then they say, can you tell me the person in human resources who's responsible for hiring decisions? Although they don't even say it that well. And I ask them, do you know who you're calling? Like, I don't say it, but in my brain, I'm like, I have trained thousands of recruiters in the recruitment industry in Canada in my life, and you're calling me and you don't even know who I am. Did you spend a minute to go to my website to look up who I am? Did you spend a second to figure out that you're calling a recruiter, trainer, an executive, and company owner to figure out what you're selling to them? Do some research. Be respectful. I mean, one of the things that people ask all the time, which I think is an okay question, hey, is this an okay time to have a conversation? I need a couple minutes. Is that okay? Be respectful. Or listen to the tone of their voice and the manner in which they're responding to you and say, obviously, this is not a great time for me to talk to you. You sound like you're in a hurry. Could we schedule a time that I can call you back? Be respectful. Think about this thing right here. This is an iPhone microphone. iPhone microphones, when you go to buy a headset, everything in the marketing thing about your headset will be about how great it sounds. You're going to buy Beats, or you're going to buy this corporate headset or something, and they're going to tell you how great it sounds. Like you're listening to music all day long. The only thing that matters is, how does your voice sound? How clear is the microphone on your cell phone or on your microphone or on your headset? Make sure that your line has clarity, because if your line sounds staticky or buzzing or quiet or ridiculous, they're going to think that you're unprofessional and you're calling from a call center in a foreign country. So make sure that you've got clarity of voice and clarity of line. Ask for permission. Is it okay to talk right now? Do you mind if we talk? Um, can we have a conversation about? Ask for permission and be respectful. And if they give you permission, if you need to schedule the call again. But here's the thing too. I don't know if this drives you crazy, but this makes me crazy. When people say, I've got something very important I want to talk to you about. Can you give me a call back? It can't be that important. If my child had been hit by a car, you would have said, Steve, we've got a problem. Your child's been hit by a car. He or she's okay. We're taking her to the hospital. Call me back and I'll get you up to speed so that we can meet you at the hospital. If that was important, you'd say so. You wouldn't say, hi, it's the school calling. Can you call me back? Well, how important is it? Be clear of purpose in your message. Do not leave messages with people that say, I've got something important to talk to you about, or if you've got a moment, can you call me back? Say why you're calling. I'm a professional recruiter and I specialize in this. And I understand you're the person. Now, here's something else too. Use their name. Say, hi, Rudolph. This is Steve Jones calling. Right off the back, say their name and your name. That's respectful. That's informative. That is the beginning of a relationship and a rapport. It's unbelievable the number of people that leave messages you can't even understand their name and they don't say the purpose of their call. And if you've taken anything at all in terms of any kinds of how to build friends and have respect for people or to negotiate, to sell, you got to use their name. You don't use their name in an insincere way. You don't use their name too much, but say their name. Don't be afraid to name drop. If I was calling someone and I got them from a referral from ACSESS, I might say, Mary McKinnon, the executive director of ACSESS, gave me your name. And I hope you don't mind that I gave you a call. My name's Steve Jones. Rudolph, can I schedule a time with you to get a call back so that we can talk about this topic? That's the way it's got to go down. Any other call that doesn't say their name, that doesn't say your name, that doesn't say the purpose of your call, that doesn't ask for permission and be respectful, and is unclear of something like something you know about their call, or by a name drop, or a referral, or how you found out about them, or something sincere, is going to reduce the probability of a callback. This is not magic. Listen to your salespeople make sales calls. This does not happen. Remember to stay positive. People don't call you back and it's got nothing to do with you. It's got everything to do with them. It's got everything to do with their schedule and how busy they are and what they think is important. And it's got nothing to do with you. So you got to stay positive all the time. And you have to have positiveness in the tone of your voice. I have a trick. Take a mirror, put it on your desk, put it right there behind your computer or something like that. Look in the mirror while you're making phone calls to people and smile. It is incredible how your intonation and your voice changes when you're smiling. And a lot of times we don't know that we're not smiling. So put a mirror there, look at yourself. You're beautiful. What is going to inspire you to be more positive than looking at your beautiful face? Put the mirror there. It changes the intonation in your voice and the positive sound of your voice. Imply a benefit, then ask a question. I think this is going to be interesting for you because we've got this thing. Is there a good time for me to call you back, or somebody else you'd like me to call? So imply a benefit before you ask a question. Avoid company jargon. Whatever you say in your company about search or placement or candidates or this or that, or if you work for one of the multinational companies and you call your temp workers associates. Stay away from the jargon. Whatever language you would use to talk to your child's teacher at school is the language that you should probably be using with the person on the phone, because they got their own jargon and it's not your jargon. And their jargon is right and your jargon is wrong, or their jargon is understood and your jargon is misunderstood. Stay away from jargon. Avoid questions that you might ask of people in those first calls or in your conversation starters or in your messages that show your lack of knowledge. Know something before you start asking questions. Again, the reasons why those calls that I get, I think, are just so crazy. They know nothing. They don't even know what I do. They don't even know the type of business that I'm in. So we've got these steps in our sales calls. We've got the introduction. We need to develop rapport and interest. We've got to get permission and acceptance to be in this relationship. We have to ask qualifying questions to determine, does this customer even buy? Do they have the authority to buy? Are they the right person to buy? Do they buy what I sell? We have to then start to listen to the objections. And in the old days, there was a thing that they call the rickety rack railroad track, get the customer back on track. This is when the customer starts to give you these objections that are false. We have to discover the real objections and get them back on track. And then we have to ask them to do something. This is the call to action. We attend a meeting. We set up a call for us tomorrow. Can we schedule a call with me and my recruiter and you and your manager? Some type of call to action. This is the most important thing that I've had with people, this topic, where when I'm doing coaching with people, this is the thing that is the simplest in the world that makes the biggest difference in people's lives. And very often people have talked about it, heard about it, tried it a little bit, but until they actually make it a part of their life, do they not get benefits. And then after they've done it for a month, they go, oh my goodness, I can't believe how more effective I am. And the interesting thing is that when they're not being effective, they know it. And when you don't block time, you don't even know that you're not being effective. So what is time blocking? It's when you take your schedule and you put in it activities, not just appointments. This is the time when I make my sales calls. This is the time when I do my follow-up emails. This is the time when I'm going to do my interviews. This is the time when I'm going to call a meeting. You don't necessarily yet have to have an actual appointment. You don't have to have an actual appointment at that exact time. You have to block the time out and say, that's when I do that thing. That's when I go for lunch. That's when I have my exercise. That's when I phone my kids. That's when I stop and read. And you put these activities in your schedule with goals on how, into smaller bits in marketable tasks, what you're going to achieve inside that block of time. So we say this is outbound sales time. Break it down, hour and a half. I'm going to make 16, 12, 9, whatever contacts. I'm going to make 22 attempts. I'm going to have 9 conversations. I'm going to make 15 attempts. I'm going to have 4 conversations blocked in the schedule. Sometimes weeks in advance. Sometimes the schedule can be so consistent that once you got it figured out, that every week there's certain things that always happen in those blocks of time. It helps us to achieve our goals. It helps us to stay focused on the activities that mean the most. It helps us to better control than a to-do list. Because having a to-do list is just things that is like a wish list of things that we want to do. But putting them in scheduled times in your schedule allows us to help achieve our goals and be aware of how we're utilizing our time from hour to hour and day to day. We, I have this thing called context switching. By having clear blocks of time for specific tasks, you minimize the context switching. It means you can stay focused exclusively on that task that's got a specific goal or outcome without constantly shifting between email and phone call and person walking in the door and responding to this thing and then opening your mail and then doing the payment and then sending the thing over to accounts payable and then getting a phone call from an applicant. It allows you to stay in the context and try to stay focused until you finish it. So by incorporating this time blocking in your schedule, you're going to see incredible productivity. And you can do it by using your Outlook calendar. You can use it by using your Google Calendar. You can use it by using the calendar that's embedded in your ATS and your critical mission software inside your business. You can build a form. Doesn't matter. But what we do is we first decide what are the active down at the bottom, what are the activities, 3, 4, 5, that we need to perform that I call closest to the road. Because where the rubber meets the road, that's where the activity creates the result. So the activities that are closest to the road, making cold calls gets us new prospects. Doing interviews of candidates gets us more potential sendouts. Sending resumes and presenting resumes to customers fills jobs. Find the activities that are closest to the road. Pick 3 or 4 or 5, no more. Down at the bottom, I've got 10 because I'm giving you different examples of different things. But pick 3 or 4 or 5 and make them a part of a standard weekly schedule so that every week we know at this time of day we perform that activity. Block it out. Do not put other things in that time. And if you fail to do it because you had a dentist appointment or because there was an emergency or because something of higher priority happened, then use your system in Outlook and in other Google. You can drag and drop. Do not miss it. Do not drag it and drop it and move it to another place so that that set of activities still happens. So now that we've got this time that we're going to be making calls, we do our pre-call planning. So we research our prospect so that we don't make those ridiculous calls that I told you about. We know your contact's name and your title. We've got a rapport builder. So we're going to do our name dropping. We've got some facts about their company because we've done some research. So we know that, I love the more like this. More like this is when you've got a customer that is really successful with you that does something for the same reason. Remember when we did our target market, we found other companies that do exactly the same thing, same industry, same need, same technology, same something. So you find other customers and then that's when you tell the story. So for example, in one of our companies, all we do is staff theaters. All we do is staff theaters. Customer service reps, bartenders, theaters, lighting, the lighting and electrical people through the union. We've got a relationship with the union. And so all the union people come through us and they go into the theater. And so if we're going to call a theater, I can say, hey, Ed Mervish, the reason I'm calling you is because I work with this theater and this theater and this theater, and we do all of their IATSE lighting people and electricians, and we understand your business. And I want to know, can we come in and visit you to talk to you about your upcoming show that I know is coming from New York in 6 months from now? We should start planning that. Can we set up an appointment? So more like this. Establish what your call objective is. Is it to get an appointment? Is it to learn information? Is it to develop a rapport? Is it for the first step of your toolkit process? What is the goal and the objective of the call? Going into the call, hoping something good will happen is not good enough. Be very specific about what it is you can accomplish more, but have that minimum thing that you want to accomplish in that call. Always send out reminders. If you set up a scheduled call for today at 9 o'clock in the morning, then yesterday you should have sent out a call saying, just remind, saw this in my inbox. We're up for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Hope, looking forward. Don't even say, is it still good? Be very assumptive. Looking forward to speaking to you. Here's the link again for the Zoom call, or here's my number in case, there's an issue that you can call me back directly. I'll be calling you at this number. so that they can look and say, well, I'm not going to be at that number. I'm going to be in my car. So they'll give you their cell phone number. Confirm, 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 confirm. And of course, always be on time. So you're going to head into these sales meetings. You're going to make introductions of people. You're going to define for them what the purpose of the call of the meeting is. Then you define your goals and objectives for the meeting. And then that's when you can start to talk about things. But until you've actually had your introductions, you've broken the ice, you've confirmed the objectives of the meeting, and you've defined all of that for people, then you can start to have conversations about what the customer needs and what's driving their decision and what the solutions are, and you can start selling. But until you do the rapport part, it's just like trying to get through to them on the phone or trying to get through the barrier. You just can't do it because people aren't feeling that there's purpose to this. The whole point of having a call with person is to discover their needs, and we discover people's needs by asking open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are the questions that cannot be answered with a number or a yes or a no. They cannot be answered with a one word. They require an explanation. So open-ended questions might be, can you tell me about a time or some of the issues that have made you think that you might want to deal with a staffing company for the solution? You can ask it can be so open-ended to say, so wait, so what's going on in your business these days? How are things going? This is really open-ended. And so if you don't know where a conversation is going to go, the more open-ended it can be, the more opportunity there is for them to start to tell you about the things that are important. They may not go into detail, but you can start to narrow in on the questions and get more closed and more closed and more closed until eventually at the end of the call, you can say, if I sent you resumes this afternoon of people that can do that, would you be interested in interviewing them? Which is a very specific yes or no closed-ended question. And then we also have to understand about the nature of these types of questions. We've got questions that are called positive response conditioning questions. So if you know enough about your customers and your customers' business, you can ask questions that you know that they will answer yes. Do you use staffing companies? Of course they do. You already knew that. The answer is yes. Have, you know, if we think about the apple, you know, do you like fruit? Yes. Do you like fresh fruit? Yeah, of course I do. Do you like apples? Well, who doesn't like apples? Yeah, of course I like apples. Have you got some sort of price point for your apples that you think is like the proper price for your? Yes, I do. Well, what would that price might be? Well, that would be anything under $1 is probably a good price for an apple. Okay, that's good. So you like apples, you like fresh apples. Is there a particular kind of apple? They go, yeah, this kind of apple. So now you've got a whole bunch of yeses. And so when you finally say, hey, I've got a delicious apple, type of apple, it's fresh, it's 90 cents. Would you be interested in having some delivered to your house in the next time you need apples? It's more difficult for the person to say no once they've said yes to a bunch of things. So a more the customer engages in telling you things without feeling like they're making a commitment to a sale, the more likely it is that they're going to say yes later on. And so anybody who's ever, when they're younger or single and they're asking for dates, they don't go and ask somebody to go out on a date the first question. They go through a bunch of questions in the conversation that finds things in common. And once they've gone through the conversation with a bunch of questions where they find things in common and they know what they like and they like to have lunch and that they take their lunch and things and that they're available on the weekend, then eventually you say, well, then would it be okay if we had coffee on Sunday morning after church? And if the answer was, yeah, I'm going to go to church, and yeah, we go to church and we do this thing and I'm available on Sundays and I love to go out for coffees, then when it comes time to say no, they got to really mean no in order to say no, which is unlikely because of the 7 positive responses that were conditioned prior to the closing question. And then sometimes we can ask a pre-closing question, which is a little too early, which will get the person to eventually tell us the reason why they're going to say no. which allows us to have a conversation about that. So if it's price, if it's guarantee, if it's the skills of the person in the job, if it's the thing that they need to wait and do internally before they can entertain people externally to fill the job, we can ask the question. And then if they give us an objection, and remember I talked to you about, I used the expression, I didn't use the expression, all the buyers are liars, that if they give you false objections, then we can say and use phrases that are called bridge phrases, like just suppose. So if the person says, I can't really do that until we've posted it internally for 3 weeks, because that's part of the internal process, then we can say, just suppose this has been posted for 3 weeks, or say 2 weeks. Would this be the right time for us to start submitting resumes to you so that you can start reviewing them at the 22nd day? Yeah, but we need to go through that. Or they might switch. The just suppose question allows us to determine, was that the real objection, or are they going to throw another one out there? Are they going to give us a new objection, which now tells us, well, maybe the first one wasn't the real objection. There's another one. It's got to do with price or authority or the boss's preferences because the boss's son owns an employment agency. So we can use the just suppose to ask the conditional question to determine what the real objection is before we can then move towards the closing question. So these different kinds of questions and asking questions in different ways will allow you to determine whether you're hearing the real objection. So you can know things like, is it an authority issue? Is it a stakeholder issue? Is there, do they truly understand? I remember one time when we were trying to influence a government to make a government policy decision, and we had the conversation, then we asked them to explain it to their coworker, and they explained it to their coworker totally wrong. And the way that we were to try to figure out was, did they totally understand what we were offering? Was say, could you explain that to Mary so that she understands it? Then they explained it to their coworker, and they explained it totally wrong. And so we knew we had to go back again and start again. So do they truly understand the offering so that their objections are truly true, real objections? And then again, sometimes that means that no is no, not doesn't mean no, it just means no, not yet. You still have something that you need to overcome in terms of their objections. So when we go to do our closing with these customers, now we could be closing with a candidate, we'd be closing with a customer. We have to ask for people to do agreement to do business with us. So it could be the piece of paper we sign. It could be the order, taking out our order form and writing down an order. It could be asking for qualifications or things that we can maybe change about the order. Getting them to accept a candidate, to look at an acceptance, them making an offer. These are all steps in the closing. Again, once we think we've closed things in the staffing business, we're not really closed until the invoice is paid. And in many cases, we think we've closed because the customer said, yeah, I'll do business with you. Okay, that's a type of closing. Then they're going to give us an order. That's a type of closing. Are they going to see our candidates and return our calls and give us feedback? That's a type of closing. Once they see our candidates, are they going to resumes? Are they going to do interviews? That's a close on the interview, close on the job offer, close on the payment. So every single one of these places where we think that we've closed, we need to follow up with a phone call or an email or something that basically confirms the closing and has an agreed upon next step so that it affirms and reaffirms the closing. And so we fulfill our minor promises to them. They continue to fulfill their minor promises to us, which every time that they fulfill a minor promise to us is just like a positive response condition. They become more inclined to keep it going instead of changing their mind after the fact or changing the process as they move along. Performance metrics. we all talk about KPIs. I just want to say this much. So when you're dealing with KPIs, focus on no more than 5. I think 3 or 4 is the right number of things that we measure. Remember this, what we measure is what we get. Whether we're measuring it for ourselves or we're measuring it in people that work with us or for us, that when we set out key performance indicators, the indicators are activities, not outcomes. Performance is outcomes. Key performance indicators are activities that give us a strong indication of what the outcome is going to be. So if we've got hours, if we operate a beauty salon and we measure activities of time in the chair, then the outcome will be revenue. So we don't want to talk to our people about what the results are in terms of revenue. We want to talk about what activities do you do in the chair? Do you give them hair color? Do they give them a perm? Do you give them a straightening? Do you give them a wash? Do you give them a cut? Do you give them a dry? Each one of these activities translates into gross profit and revenues. And so the activities in the staffing business on a sales desk could be sales calls. They could be telephone connects. They can be send outs of candidates. They could be quotations on business. They could, but pick 3 or 4 activities. Once you pick 10 activities, then you make it very unclear as to what the highest priority activities are. If you say, hey, we've got these 3 key, that's why they're called key performance indicators. We pick 3 or 4, we focus on those 4, then there's no ambiguity about what activity we need to be participating in that's going to get us the result that we expect. And so these activities need to be specific. How many of them do we expect? They need to be real. They need to be measurable. You know, in golf, we talk about greens and regulation. The green is the green. There's no ambiguity about what the green looks like. It's cut and has a different kinds of grass and there's an edge to it and the ball is on the green. And if it's a par 4, the ball has to be on the green after the second shot. And if it's on the green in the second shot, it's greens in regulation and it's measurable. If we said, oh, it's got to be near the green, or it's got to be someplace where we could use our putter, that's not measurable. That's pretty subjective. So we have to have a measure. You have to talk to people about if you're going to say sales calls, that is a real conversation with a real person, not a voicemail, not a whatever, a real conversation with a real person who has the authority to buy, and you talked about business. There's a sales call. And you measure and you say, we have to have 5 of those or 6 of those or 12 of those. Whatever the number it is, it has to be attainable. If you say to people, I once did some work with a company and they expected their salespeople to have 40 sales contacts a day. And I was like, what? 40 sales calls a day. Well, it was an Ottawa-based company that had a Toronto office. And what they did in Ottawa was they were on these vendor of record lists and they had like 400 potential buyers. And all they did was phone and say, hello, Jean, do you have an order for me today? Hello, Marie, do you have an order for me today? Hello, Mark, do you have an order for me today? Hello, Peter, do you have an order for me today? That's all they really did. Hey, how are you? It's Steve calling from here. Just calling to see if you've got anything you need me to fill for Monday. And then they'd go, nope, okay, and they move on to the next call. So maybe 40 people on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday was a reasonable thing to do, that you talk to 120 people 3 days before or 4 days before the orders would start if you had 400 on your list. But in Toronto, they didn't have that. In Toronto, you had to get through the gatekeeper. You had to call the person. You had to ask them about their business. And you had like 5 customers who generated 80% of your business. So 40 was ridiculous. So is it attainable? If you give people unattainable goals, they stop trying to achieve them. If you give people attainable goals that are too low, then they have nothing to strive towards. So are they attainable and measurable and specific, and do they relate to the types of outcomes that we want? So again, rubber road, rubber road. Is it directly related to the thing that we want? Sales calls with prospective customers who are qualified is rubber road. It's right there. The activity is connected to the outcome. If it's sending out emails or filling out forms or sending out brochures, pretty far from the road. It's an activity that is not related directly to the outcome. It might influence the outcome somewhere down the road, but it is not directly related to the outcome. And then secondly, every time that we set a specific measurable attainable goal that is directly related to our outcomes, it must be within a time frame. And this is why we do it in blocks. This is why we say block time in our schedule so that it's done between 12 and 2. And trick. The shorter the time frame, the more likely the KPI activity will be achieved. If you say you got to do this in a month, pretty good chance that you're all over the map during the month. If you say it in a week, pretty good chance Friday you're scrambling and then lying on your report on Monday morning. If you say this has to be done between 9 and 10 o'clock this morning and you need 6, it's attainable, a number in a short time frame, the likelihood of that happening is incredible compared to longer time frames. So specific, measurable, attainable, related, and within a very specific time frame. So now that we've got these measurable goals and objectives and things, do we ask ourselves, do we have documentation that will really service all these activities that are predetermined and predefined? You do not want your salespeople crafting wonderful emails and service agreements and job order details and guarantees. You want that stuff ready to roll that maybe has got 1 or 2 or 3 editable fields so that they can edit it to specifically meet the needs of that customer and move on. Efficiency matters in sales. And so we've got these term sheets or written agreements that, by the way, this is an interesting thing. I once worked with a company training people that the salespeople were so reluctant to use term sheets or written agreements. And the reason why they were so reluctant to use term sales or written agreements is because their sales process was not good up until the point where they typically brought it out. And so it felt uncomfortable asking somebody to sign here when they weren't ready to sign here. So first off, they needed to improve their sales process. But once they got to closing, pulling the piece of paper out and saying, okay, let's write in that rate here. Let's write in the job title here. Who do you want these resumes sent to? Let's put it in here. What's their email address? Let's put it there. What do you think is a reasonable amount of time for them to respond when we send them in? Should it be 24 hours? Okay, we'll respond within 24 hours right here. Okay, can we get a copy of this? Can you run a copy of this? And then we'll both have a copy of it and we'll sign it. And so then they go get a copy. This closes. So we found that within a year, every salesperson was using a term sheet. We called it a term sheet there. Was using a term sheet to close their deals. Whereas before, they had nothing in writing. Nothing. And the reason why they had nothing in writing is because they did not get to a closing stage on their deals. So they were afraid to put it in writing. Whereas once they did a better job of selling and closing, then the term sheet clarified that the deal was done and helped to make sure that people responded to your calls, took your candidates, interviewed the people you sent, made job offers for the people that they interviewed. So details and negotiables are defined in writing. The person who's signing it's got authorization. Now you're confirmed. What customer is going to sign a term sheet if they don't have the authorization to do that? So it clarifies for you again that we've got the authorized buyer working with you. It clarifies the customer's expectations so that they know that you know. When the customer feels confident that you know what their expectations are, they're more inclined to respond to your calls, see your candidates, respond to your emails, make job offers. When the client thinks that you don't know, when you send a resume, they don't even look at it, let alone call you back. And it happens all the time. It happens all the time that junior salesperson who hasn't done a great job with the customer says to their boss, I can't get Joe customer to phone me back. I sent them 3 resumes last week. I don't even know. It's so unfair, they say. I don't even know if they like them, if I'm in the right ballpark. And then the boss makes the call, and the boss sounds authoritative, and the boss is asking the right questions, and the boss does the thing, and they get through to them right away. It happens all the time that as soon as the client thinks and believes that you understand their expectations and deliverables, the client is more responsive to you. Things like payment amounts, formulas for things to be determined, barriers to exit I talked about earlier, if they're written down and created, barriers to multiple competition, to stop people from having 2 or 3 suppliers. All of these things in writing help to make sure that the deals are going to go through. So let's talk a little bit about what goes on inside your organization. You just don't need to have the conversation. Are your salaries and commissions designed in such a way to motivate people to do the things and behave in the way that you expect them to behave? If it's a salaried job, does it give them incentive to go after new customers? If it's a straight commission job that only pays them on new customers, does it give them incentive to work with existing customers to penetrate them and get more business? If it's a commission job that only pays them commission 6 months or 3 months or 12 months down the road when they finally hit their annual objective, does that give them the kind of response and the feeling of success that they need? So does your salary and commission design package work in a way that is conducive to and motivating for the type of activities and behavior that you want to provide incentive for? Is this package designed to work as a team or as an individual? I know in some companies where resumes are kept in the desk, they don't go into the system because they know that if they go into the system, somebody else might place that candidate in 6 months from now, and the original person who put the resume in the system may not get commission for it. Is it designed to be collaborative and cooperative to get a greater whole, or is it designed to reward individual performance? Is it designed for new business versus maintenance business? Is it built upon sales? Is it built upon activities? Or is it built upon gross profit? Hey, by the way, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is gross profit. Activities drive gross profit. Sales is a number that gets in the way, that gives us some false feelings sometimes. Unless, of course, there's really strict rules between sales and gross profit inside your organization. Does it fairly compensate individual performance versus split for performance? So if a person goes out and gets a new customer, do they get, and they bring it into the company and they give you an order 6 months later, does this person get, who brought the new customer in 6 months ago, do they get rewarded? If somebody phoned that customer every week, this person brought them in, somebody else phoned that customer every week till they got an order, do they get rewarded? If somebody else recruited a candidate that got put into the database but had no specific job in mind, but later on that candidate ended up in that job, do they get rewarded? If someone sat and matched the candidates in the database to the job orders in the system, and they did the work to call them up and see if they wanted to go, and somebody presented the resume to the client, do they get rewarded? I can think of at least 4 pretty definable ways that people can contribute individually to a deal. And so is it split? Is it split 4 ways? Is it split 2 ways? Is it split 3 ways? Is it split no way? Does it go to the team? Does everybody get the same? How is your compensation designed? Does it provide incentive for people to act and behave in the way that you wish for them to behave? Is it based, in some cases, if our KPIs are on activities, and activities are closest to the road, and activities drive results, maybe sometimes we should be rewarding people for their activities, knowing that results are going to come down later. What's your measurement system? Do you believe, and is it designed so that what you measure is what you get? So we've got some topics about margins, and some people say we got higher margins because we're specialty. Other people say we've got lower margins because we're high volume business and repeat business. And so I will just say this much, that most people and companies that make the most money are high volume businesses with repeat orders, so that they can spend most of their time on filling orders and getting revenue than spending most of their time on getting orders with the hopes that they might get the order to fill. It doesn't mean that new business development isn't important. Of course, it's important, and it doesn't matter about your business model, but volume of business and repeat order usually drives high gross profit and productivity. Remember this, that in the temp and contract business, the length of the contract matters. So if you've got a customer, like I once had, that wanted customer service representatives to work on their banks mostly on Fridays and always on the Fridays before a long weekend, but the rest of the time they didn't give us orders, but they wanted 200 of them on Fridays and 250 of them or 300 of them on Fridays before long weekends. We did a ton of work. Well, there's 50 Fridays, 52, call it 50 Fridays in the year. There's 2,000 work days in the year. So what do I got to fill? Like 200, 400 orders to get one? I don't know how many do I have to fill 400 orders to get one person year worth of revenue? Or do I go out and get one order that lasts for a year? So I do the work once, and then every week, invoice, pay, invoice, pay, invoice, pay. I do the work once. Or do I have to go every week and fill 5 one-day orders, do 5 times the amount of work every week, times 50 weeks of the year, 250 times the amount of work to get the same gross profit as a one-year order? Length of assignment matters. The shorter the assignment, the more work we have to do. The shorter, if we put 13 people out on 1 week assignments, at the end of that week, I got to get 13 new orders and fill 13 more orders. And in order to go to 14 people, I got to get 14 new orders next week to go to 14, not 1. Because if my assignments were 2 weeks long, at the end of the first week, if I got 1 more order, I went to 14. If I got 13 orders a week, I went to 26. So I can get the hours and revenue of 26 people by my average assignment length going from 1 week to 2 weeks. Imagine if it goes from 1 week to 13 weeks, 3 months. Now my potential revenue at the end of 13 weeks, on 1/13 of it is going to, on average, drop away. And I get to fill my 1 more week, and I cap out now at 13 times the number of orders I can get in a week. But if the number of orders I can get in a week is 10, that's 130 people out working. In the 14th week, 10 stop, 10 start, I'm still at 130. The 15th week, 10 stop, 10 start, I'm at 140, I'm still at 130. But if I can extend that to 26 weeks, the same amount of work, I now go to 260, multiplied by their hours. So length of assignment matters. So if you're in the kind of business that is 1 day at a time, 1 week at a time, think about how your salespeople can lengthen the length of those assignments. And I'm not telling people to lower their margins, but I am telling you that if you say to a customer, hey, our 1 week assignments are this markup, and our 2 week assignments are this markup, and our long-term assignments are this markup, that you might increase, I don't know that you will, you might give people the incentive to keep them there for 13 weeks or 26 weeks or 7 years. So length matters. Difficulty of the search and the candidate supply matters in terms of what your margin ought to be and what your price should be. How much notice they give you and the time to fill should go into your price and your negotiations. People who phone you at 7 o'clock in the morning for you to start at 8 o'clock, I think maybe you've got reason to say my price should be a little bit higher because of the nature of the way that this works. I don't know until 7 o'clock in the morning where I even got any work to do today. Are there mandatory and value added requirements? For example, they might say, hey, the person who comes to work in this job needs to speak Italian, needs to speak a particular language, needs to have a particular certification. So if there's mandatory requirements and value added requirements, that again can make the search more difficult and the supply more difficult. And so therefore the margin can be there. Very often guarantees need to be negotiated in the context of these things, like how long is the guarantee? How is it a cash guarantee? Is it a replacement guarantee? All these things about guarantees can become part of the negotiation. Whether you do the employer's profile, is it a good employer? Is it a nice place to work? Is it safe? Is it convenient location? The employment conditions, these are all things that can go into your price negotiations. Payment terms, how many competitors are there? Are you getting the business exclusively? These all go into the margin calculation. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but let's just make sure we get our lingo correct. Margin is a percentage, and margin is a percentage that is based upon what the gross profit is as a percentage of the sale amount. So if it's the sale amount is $100 and there's a $10 gross profit, it's a it's a 10% margin. Okay, so we can talk about gross profit and margin as a percentage. Markup is a dollar volume, a dollar amount. We mark it up $25, $50, $2, and it's a markup over the pay rate. Now, it can be markup over the pay rate plus costs, or it can be a markup over the basic pay rate. The markup, very often we say it's a markup over the fully burdened pay rate, or it's a markup over the gross pay rate. So if the pay rate was $20 an hour, that's gross. If the fully burdened pay rate was $22 an hour, $4 an hour, then the $10 markup, right? So we talk about markup in dollars, and you can say, what's my markup percentage? But you would always, when you talk about margin, you're always talking in percentage. When you talk about markup, you're always talking in dollars. And if you want to talk about your markup, it's as a percentage. You would say, what's my markup percentage? And then you got to know that the first one, margin, is a percentage of the sale amount, and the markup is a amount over the pay amount. These numbers, customers throw them around. You think you're negotiating, but you're negotiating two different things entirely. Talked about staying positive, about having your mirror. Your attitude is contagious. The smile on your face makes a difference. So we're coming into closing. We've got 10 more minutes, and I'm going to spend 5 on this. These are the things that I call the rules of sales. Remember, what you measure is what you get. This is our key performance indicators, and this is our commission plans. Time kills deals. Respond to your customers quickly. Answer the phone. Be there when they need you. My father's old expression, if you keep on doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep on getting what you've been getting. If you want to make something happen that's different from yesterday, you better do something different than yesterday. It only makes sense. So setting up a new blocked time system with new KPIs is likely to get you a new set of outcomes. Remember, we talked about differentiators. Your integrity is the only thing that you control absolutely. Your company is your company. The industry is the industry. The market is the market. Donald Trump is Donald Trump. What happens in interest rates and inflation and things happen. But you are the only thing that you are in control of. Be in control of everything that you can control. If you wait for other people to do things, you wait for the customer to call you back, you wait for your coworker to do something, it might not happen. If we talk about those personality traits that we talked about earlier today, about assertiveness, being in control matters. Blocking time. Turn your goals into tasks. It's okay to say, I want my sales to increase by 100%, but if you want your sales to increase by 100%, then block tasks, activities 100% in your blocks. The only way that you get a different outcome is by changing your activities. Only activities create results. We talk about blocking time. Be the expert. You are taking your CPC. Learn about your industry. Learn about your customers. Give people advice. Give people advice for their benefit, not for your, so you look good. Give people advice because if it makes a difference to them, if you listen to them and you listen to their needs, wants, desires, fears, guilt, holes, and you give them good advice, they will respect you and you will be different. Remember those graphs where we talked about patience and impatience? On the left-hand side was impatient. Impatience is a good thing. We hear about, we very often the person behind us, when the light turns green, they honk their horn before we have a chance to even put our pedal on the metal. And so we say, hey, you impatient SOB. And we think of their impatience as bad. But when you combine impatience together with a sociability and a desire, have a relationship with people, and you start multitasking, then the rule is you want something done, give it to a busy person. Give it to the person with the messiest desk. Impatient people get things done. Getting it done is what is going to get you customers coming back over and over again because they'll know they can count on you. Have the courage to ask. You don't ask, you don't get. And if you ask and they say no, ask why not. Find a polite way to say, obviously you've got a good reason for saying that. You've been doing this for a long time. Do you mind if I ask you why? Make promises and keep them. Promise you'll call them back. Call them back. Promise you'll send the resume. Send the resume. Promise you'll text them your number. Text them their number. Promise, promise, promise. Keep your promise. Every time you make a promise and you become a promise keeper, you reestablish in a subtle way that you are a person that they would like to have a relationship with. Remember positive response conditioning. A client who's in the habit of saying yes to the little things is more inclined to say yes to the big things. Answer the phone. If you have got voicemail and you've got things going on and customers are phoning you, have call display, answer the phone. Every phone call that goes to your voicemail or is not answered is a missed opportunity. It's your choice to answer the phone. Answer it. Put your contact information on everything. Make it easy for them to find you. Make it unambiguous who you are, what your name is, who you work for, and make sure that whenever they go looking for you, even if they only remember one word in your company name, that they can do a search on their phone or in their email or somewhere in their text messages, and they will find you so that they can get your contact information into the contacts and call you, because they will not remember you. Remember that the shorter the cycle that you measure things in, remember the SMART system, the shorter the time frame, the more likely it will be done. Measure things in short cycles, and when you have expectations of people who report to you, measure them in short cycles. What are you going to do for me this morning? What are you going to accomplish this afternoon? What do you do between 9 and 10 o'clock? Shorter the cycle, the more likely it is you will get outcomes. Remember this about your customers, it's always about them. Don't take it personally. How busy they are, how they feel, what their priorities are, what their boss is like, how they got out of bed in the morning, how they feel physically, whether they are proud of themselves and or not. It all has to do with them. It doesn't have to do with you. It never has to do with you. Don't take it personally. Be part of the positive part of their life, and so at least you're not painful. But don't take it personally. You can do some of these things by replacing things that we typically say, like, yeah, but, you know, and we can change those things. Okay, that's good. Let's do this then. Let's change some of the negative words that we have in our lexicon and our expression and just say exactly the same thing. Instead of no, say yes. Instead of yeah, but say, okay, let's do this. Are your promotional items, are they sales avoidance tools? Do you want to just drop off a coffee mug because you don't want to make a sales call and ask a person for an order or have a meaningful conversation? Or are they brand builders and icebreakers? Are they opportunity for you to swag with them and make that swag matter? It's not the swag that matters, whether it's a dipstick cleaner or a coffee mug or a golf ball. It's how you use it that matters, and how the use of that swag will influence your opportunity to have a sales call with the person. Remember, hope is not a strategy. Everything is done with intent and specific, with some goal in mind. So when we ask an open-ended question or a closed-ended question, we know where we're going. When we're doing positive response conditioning, we know when we're going. When we ask why not, we know it's because we're overcoming objections. Hope is not a strategy. Setting goals, setting activity goals, understanding our customers, focusing on our target markets, dealing with authorized buyers, all of these things are part of our strategy, and we can use them to move forward. But hoping that things will be better tomorrow is not the plan. Okay, guys, that's it for today. Hopefully, listen, man, we took 17 hours of sales training and brought it down to like 3 hours, less than 3 hours. So I don't expect any of this stuff to, be super detailed for you, but I hope that you got something out of it. Does anyone have any questions at all?
No. I'm going to use the impatient bit on my wife. Listen, it's good to be impatient.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But remember the sociability part too, right? It's good to be nice when you say it. Anybody else there, or any feedback, any comments? No?
No, it was all really good.
Okay. If you ever want to call, I think this might be the last session I do with you guys. I'm not sure. If you ever want to call me, if you want to talk to me about any of the things that are here, or if you have got issues that come up in your business, marketing issues, legal issues, recruiting software issues, whatever, employee issues, then please feel free to give me a call. I don't mind. Of course, I do this for a living, so I'm not going to enter into like a, give you 30 hours of my time, but I'm always happy to try to provide advice to people on issues around the industry. So if you're thinking about something and you just want to have some feedback or some input, you've got a concern or you want to know where to go, then my email address, I've got lots of them, but the easiest one to remember is steve.jones@bell.net. So everything, all of my company email, they all go to that one. They all end up in one place. So just use that one if you want. Steve.jones@bell.net. And my phone number is 416-565-9638. That's 9638. 565-9638. That's my cell phone number. Phone me, ask me a question anytime you want. I'm always happy to hear from people and to help out. Wish you guys the best of luck.
See you in Montreal, Steve.
I will be in Montreal, and I will be delivering. I'm going to take this thing that we just did now and break it up into 2 parts. We're going to spend more time on the profiling. If you're going to be in Montreal, you're probably going to sooner or later receive an email saying, hey, fill out this questionnaire and you'll get a profile done for you.
Okay.
But I would suggest that if you attended this, fill out the profile and get a profile, go see somebody else. You don't need to hear it again. I mean, you can if you want. If you love me, you can come see me again. But there's lots of content and lots of choices there. So
Nice.
yeah. So go see somebody else because it's going to be pretty much exactly the same thing.
Perfect.
Okay, guys.
Thank you so much.
You're
Steve.
welcome.
Take
Always a
care.
pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.